that right there? I had to answer a phone call. Anyway, we're still basically back on the same road. We're approaching Park Ridge Apartments right now. And these are really nice homes. These are now, I think some of these are pushing $1 million. They historically they were lower than that, but you know, some of them are getting up there right now. It's like a pool and tennis community. That's what they call it. It's cute, you know. There's a bunch of them around. You know, you have houses with about a 1/4 acre lot, and then you'll have like communal space, right? Where there'll be like a community pool and a community tennis court. It's a very common setup here. That person has no idea his headlights are off. Oh well. Only so much you can do. You can't save people from themselves. So, what can I tell you? So, most of these schools, most of these communities right around here, they all pull into Webridge Elementary School, which is really one of the top-rated ones, and then it pulls into it pulls into Creekview Elementary and then to Webridge Middle School, which are the two like highly rated. They're the ones people move here kind of like for those kind of schools. So that's something to keep in mind. There's big apartments over here, and this is what I'm trying to talk about. So like right back here, you can sort of see it because there's not a lot of leaves on the trees. There's a huge apartment complex, but they do a great job of sort of hiding it. Okay, so we're pulling now into Old Milton, and this is sort of the main commercial strip around here. And the cool thing is you can walk there, you know, from my house, and it's you know, you can have a couple acres of land, and you can have this really sort of remote feeling setup, but then walk, you know, to Starbucks, walk to the Brazilian bakery, walk to anything that you want to walk to Chinese food, walk to the grocery store. And even though I don't do it a lot anymore, knowing that you can was super duper important to me, right? The one thing I never wanted to do was wind up in a situation where I was like committed to my car for anything. And even though I use my car more than I should, the fact that I can get on a bike or I can walk and get someplace is irrationally, but honestly very calming to me. And I don't know that I would be so okay if I was in a place where I really couldn't walk anywhere. And that's something you've got to think about, because there's definitely a lot of communities where, you know, sidewalks aside, some communities have sidewalks, some don't, but some of them there's just nowhere you can go, you know, and you can't even really take a bike because, you know, the main road outside the community is maybe just a little bit too dicey. Like if this was the main road outside of my community, I would not ride a bike on it. I'm sure you can. I just wouldn't feel comfortable, right? And so, as long as that's the issue, you know, whatever. Okay, so today my car is actually going to take me. We're not going to take the highway. I guess there's something going on the highway. We're going to go on to North Point, and this is a cool. So North Point's interesting, right? It's it has this mall, and it has a lot of office and commercial space all throughout it. I mean, there's a ton of offices and big corporate campuses that come off of North Point. But it's kind of on the wrong side of the highway from a lot of the development in Alpharetta, you know. It you know, the mall itself is really an aging structure. They keep talking about what they're going to do to revitalize the mall, whether it's going to be like building a sports stadium or doing some sort of like a mixed use live work kind of thing, which they've been doing more and more out here, right? Like Avalon and Halcyon and all those things, they have it where you have a walkable shopping area, and then you have, you know, condos and houses and you know, rental apartments, and this whole sort of ecosystem of residential properties surrounding it. And so it's a great, you know what, I don't know if it's great. So when I saw it they have something like that in the Northeast. They have it all over the place, right? They have a bunch of them in Texas too, like Legacy West and all of that in Dallas. But like in the Northeast, you know, if you're coming from like New York and you're looking at it, the only real comparison, and I know they do them more, I just don't know enough of them, is like Rock Hill, which I think it's called Rock Hill, right? And it's right off of off 87 across from Stu Leonard's, and it's this, you know, it's a space where my kids used to take swim lessons there. It's a space where, you know, they built these condos and they built this sort of walkable outdoor mall, and they're trying to create this sort of pedestrian zone. I think Rock Hill in Yonkers was like version 1 of that, and they've just gotten a lot better at it as they've like iterated on it over the years. So the ones now, they feel a little bit more organic than that, but they still feel kind of fakey, right? But they're really nice. They're super clean. They're my wife loves them, right? She loves the manufactured charm. For me, it's not. It's just too manufactured to be charming. But it can totally go both ways. And people who live there love living there. So it's hard to, like, who am I to sit here bagging on it, right? These are just things to keep in mind. So we're now coming up. We're about to get to the sort of mall district. And it is, yeah, you can see there's more corporate campuses coming over here. But we're getting into where they really built out the mall. There's a big townhouse development going up here that's really actually starting to look pretty nice. I was curious how it was going to go. Then we have like a smaller low-rise office park, right? So this is it. I mean, this is honestly, you know, it's 7:30 right now. You know, traffic should be picking up, and this is. I don't want to say this is as bad as it gets, because, right? I mean, things can get really messed up anywhere. But in general, this is the commute, and it's low stress. You know, I mean, I used to occasionally. I mean, if I was taking Metro North, that's one thing, and you know, Metro North is great until it was like raining and gross and freezing, or it was super duper hot out, right? And whatever the issue might have been, you suddenly had, you know, you were standing there freezing. You know, it was great until like the weather wasn't so awesome. But driving in New York was a constant headache, and I mean, it was really, really awful. And so I feel like, you know, if you're in a situation where you're comparing the drives, then this is like heaven. You know, you can't believe that you're in it. If you're in a situation where you're going to be giving up public transit and going into your car, I mean, it depends. You know, this is my commute, so I'm not too stressed about it. If I was like on 400, which is the main north-south highway from, you know, all of the sort of North Atlanta suburbs, or most of them, for like, you know, it goes Sandy Springs, Roswell, Alpharetta, Cumming, and I'm assuming like Johns Creek and those guys would feed into it in Milton, because there's no other way really down. I mean, you are going to be kind of committed to 400, and that's brutal. I mean, I love living up here. I want as many people to live up here as possible. I love putting people into houses up here. But the real truth is, if you have to commute to like Midtown every day, living in Alpharetta is mental. Unless you have to go, you know, at total off hours, because you'll just, I mean, I'd be sitting there like chewing on my steering wheel, losing my mind. The commute could be crazy. So, you know, that's the biggest thing about living here. It's not so much where you live, it's where you live in relation to where you work and where your kids go to school, and like where you have to actually live your life, right? And if you're, you know, it's different than in New York. It really, really is, where, you know, everybody's commuting to kind of downtown and everybody's living all over the place, but it doesn't matter because it's pretty easy to get downtown from almost anywhere that you are in the city. Here, that's not the case, right? If you work in Midtown, or, you know, things like that, you should be living around there, or at least you should be living in town, or you should be living in a place where you're not going to be, you know, stuck with what could be an hour commute each way every day. You know, it's relevant, and it's one of these things that people don't think about, because when you come here, you don't come with that mentality. You come with the New York mentality, like, all right, let's look at the neighborhoods, right? Let's see what we can see. Let's see where we like the houses. Let's see what looks cute. Let's see what has great restaurants. And the problem is a neighborhood can have all of that down here and just still be an absolutely terrible choice for you, right? Because of where you need to move. And this is why local knowledge is important. This is why after 3 years of living down here, I've realized like I have a lot that I can add to this conversation. And that's why I love putting people in homes down here, because I feel like I'm helping people make the right decisions, you know, or helping them avoid bad decisions. And that's cool, right? I mean, it's a good feeling. Like you help somebody out and you find that, you know, maybe they did something a little bit different because they learned something from me that they wouldn't have known otherwise. Like it's a good feeling. And, you know, helping people avoid landmines is a good feeling. Like my wife and I were super lucky because when we moved down here, we didn't do that. You know, we had a broker who didn't really, you know, she was like, well, what neighborhoods should we look at? You know, and we were like, I don't know. Well, this house looks good, and this house looks good, and this house looks good. And she's like, okay, let's go see them all. And so we went to go see all these neighborhoods. But it's like, well, why? You know, what's the point of that? Because fundamentally, we half of those neighborhoods would have been a disaster for us to live in. You know, and we wound up being really lucky in that we found a what the hell is going on here? We found a I just want to make sure I'm not going to get like caught. We found a place that ended up working out really well for us, school-wise and, you know, work and sort of commute-wise. But it was by chance, and so that was really a problem because we let me just get in this second here. Sorry, buddy. It was just by chance that we wound up in the right space. And I mean, I really think about it. If we had, some of these places we had looked at, if we had gone there, like while the school might have been okay, you know, we would have been really stranded as far as work options would go, you know, and our broker never told us any of that. You know, they never told us anything about, they basically were like, you know, which house do you like? And that kind of sucked, right? I mean, we didn't know. Like, we had bought places in a bunch of places before, but it was never as important as here. Like in Texas, you know, you definitely couldn't live on the wrong side of the city because that would be a problem. But it was just easier to get east-west, north-south. You know, there were a lot more options and available routes to do that. Whereas down here, the issue is there really aren't that many. They're just not, you know, they aren't out here. You have a couple, we have one really main north-south road, and you don't really have a lot of east-west options. And so if you're, you know, on the wrong side, it can be a nightmare. Like, you can't look at it by as the crow flies, right? I mean, people can say, oh, Marietta's only, you know, 6 miles from, you know, the border of Alpharetta. And like, yeah, it is. But the only real way to get to Marietta is, unless you want to drive these tiny one-lane roads that would take you forever, is you basically have to go halfway down into Atlanta and then come back up. You know, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you were going to try to do that in the morning, you would lose your flippin' mind. So I think one of the most important things is really getting that local knowledge. What an awesome sunrise. Can you guys see the sunrise behind me right now? It looks primo. So where are we right now? I'll give you a little heads up here. Okay, so we're actually about to turn onto Old Roswell Road. This is the main sort of like back road that would connect Alpharetta to Roswell, then down into Sandy Springs. It's a great road to drive on. It's got a lot of business on it. It's got a lot of restaurants, got a lot of stuff on it. The Amerisbank Theater is on this road. So it's like a good kind of central place to be. I don't know that I would live right here, and I don't think there's actually a ton of options to live like right here, unless you want to do like condos or maybe some of these townhomes that are in home. But this is, a lot of people work right around here, and so you'll see that it's getting a little bit more dense. But even where it's dense, I mean, the traffic moves. You know, right now it's 7:45. You know, this is like kind of primo rush hour, and this is you know, this is pretty par for the course. This is not like an abnormal day or anything like that, and it still blows me away, right? Like, I'm gonna get into work and not be frazzled by my commute, which is great. I would suggest this, maybe, you know, for a lot of people who are thinking of coming down here, is, you know, you do a dry run. You know, you come down for a couple days, and you have to spend some time in these different communities, because they really do feel different. And it's not just about the house, you know, it's about the whole, everything that's around you. Does the downtown work for you? You know, how is the access to the highway? You know, how is the community itself? A lot of these communities, I mean, it's really interesting, right? Communities turn over. So say a community was built in like the mid-90s, okay? What you're gonna have happen is, you're gonna have the people who moved in that community originally, a lot of them moved there because they had young kids. It's the reality of the suburbs, right? That's why a lot of people move. So they come with their young kids. Then by like the 2010s, you know, those kids are out of the house. And then these people are sort of like hanging around, you know, they're living there, it's their home. And the next thing that you know, the communities no longer have young kids because they've just got a whole bunch of like the original tenants in them. What'll eventually happen is, so we're now crossing from Alpharetta into Roswell. But eventually then what'll happen is, you'll have these neighborhoods turn over kind of all at once. And all of a sudden you'll see this great migration within like a couple of years of all of these old tenants, like last wave of tenants, and a new wave kind of moving in. It's a little different down here because the property taxes are low, right? So like in Westchester and in Texas, you know, in Westchester property taxes are at 3% of assessed value. In Texas they're at 2%. It's a lot of money, right? You know, you're talking $30,000 a year and $1 million in Westchester, and $20,000 a year, and that's just property tax, right? In Texas. And what that does is it makes it so that neighborhoods change. So once you no longer need those schools, once you're not working in that neighborhood, once you no longer have to be in that part of town, you don't want to be, right? And so you sell your house and you go someplace a little bit cheaper where you don't need to pay $30,000 a year in property tax, right? You don't need the school system. You don't need all of that because like your kids aren't in it. And so you can, you know, really shave that down. And it's not always downsizing. Sometimes it's just move into a different community. The good thing, the upside of Georgia is property taxes are really low. You know, you're paying about $6,000 on $1 million per year here, as opposed to 20 or 30 in Texas or Westchester. But what that does mean is you can age in your home, right? You're never going to get forced out of your home by property taxes, and that's cool. But it does mean that the neighborhoods don't turn over as quickly as they would in Westchester or in Texas, the other places I've experienced with. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, if you're the one living there, that's great. I mean, I don't want to be forced out of my house because of property taxes. I don't want, once my kids are out of school, to be like, right, can I afford to live in the place where I built my life? Because, you know, I have to keep like feeding the government, you know, $30,000 a year. I don't necessarily want that. And so I really do like that this is a, you know, that it's different down here, right? That there's a path towards remaining in your house for as long as you want. But it does have ups and downs, though the carry costs are spectacular. I have to tell you, and it's the only thing I tell people, you would not believe what you could get for selling your house, your apartment in New York, and buying a house down here. You just wouldn't believe it, right? I mean, you'll have enough to buy more house than you ever would have thought possible. And with better schools than you would ever thought possible. And you'll have enough left over that you'd be like, hey, you know what? That car that I always loved, like I'm not paying $1,000, $1,300 a month for the garage. I get whatever car I want. And it's been, it really does change things tremendously in that respect. The financial pressures of living are lower. Anyway, we're now pulling up to Century 21 Connect Realty. And if you ever decide that you want my help finding a place to live down here, give me a call.